October 25, 1944. Bridge of the Imperial Japanese Navy cruiser Chokai, Philippine Sea. Admiral Takeo Kurita gripped the ship's railing as his lookouts reported something impossible through the pre-dawn darkness. American destroyers approaching at flank speed, their positions known with mathematical precision, despite the moonless night and tropical squall that should have rendered them invisible to any detection system known to naval warfare. Through his binoculars, Kurita watched tracer fire from USS Johnston arc through the darkness with accuracy that defied every assumption about night combat learned through 3 years of Pacific warfare. The American shells struck his flagship's superstructure with the precision of daylight gunnery, yet sunrise was still 2 hours away. No star shells illuminated the battlefield. No searchlights swept the waters. The Americans were firing blind, yet hitting their targets with devastating effectiveness. In his private cabin later that night, as damage control teams fought fires throughout his battered fleet, Kurita would write in his personal log words that captured the psychological shock experienced by the Imperial Japanese Navy throughout 1944. The Americans possess night vision that penetrates darkness itself. They locate our formations with supernatural accuracy, coordinate attacks across dozens of miles of ocean, and strike our vessels before we know they are present. This is not naval warfare as we understand it. This is something beyond our comprehension. What Admiral Kurita and his staff officers could not have known was that every American vessel in that engagement carried technology the Japanese Navy didn't realize existed. Radar systems so advanced they could detect enemy ships at ranges exceeding 20 miles, plot their exact positions on electronic displays, and direct gunfire with mechanical precision regardless of weather, darkness, or visibility conditions. The SG surface search radar installed on American destroyers provided clearer pictures of enemy fleet movements than Japanese lookouts could achieve in broad daylight with perfect weather. The transformation of night naval warfare had begun 3 years earlier in laboratories and testing facilities across the United States, where teams of engineers and scientists were solving problems the Japanese Navy never realized needed solving. While Admiral Yamamoto's staff planned Pearl Harbor using visual reconnaissance and celestial navigation, American researchers were perfecting electromagnetic detection systems that would render traditional night fighting tactics obsolete. The mathematics of radar detection were being written not in traditional naval doctrine, emphasizing visual contact and surface gunnery, but in the revolutionary physics of radio waves reflecting off metallic surfaces at ranges that seemed impossible to minds trained in optical warfare. A destroyer equipped with SG radar could detect enemy battleships at distances where the curvature of the Earth made visual detection impossible even in perfect conditions. But nothing in Japanese naval training had prepared their officers for what American technology could achieve by 1944. The scene. Imperial Japanese Navy had built the world's most powerful nighttime surface combatants. Vessels designed for close-range torpedo attacks launched by crews trained to fight in complete darkness using superior optics, exceptional seamanship, and carefully rehearsed tactical coordination. Their Type 93 long-lance torpedoes could devastate enemy formations at ranges exceeding 20 miles. Their crews possessed night vision capabilities developed through years of specialized training. Their tactical doctrine assumed darkness would neutralize American advantages in industrial production and electronic systems. They had prepared to fight a night war using 1940 technology and tactics. The Americans arrived with 1944 radar systems that made darkness irrelevant. The engagement off Samar on October 25, 1944, would demonstrate how electromagnetic warfare had fundamentally altered naval combat in ways Japanese planners never anticipated. Admiral Kurita commanded the most powerful surface fleet Japan had assembled since Midway, yet found himself outmaneuvered by American destroyers and destroyer escorts using detection systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics as understood by traditional naval officers. The journey from Japanese confidence to technological shock had begun at the radiation laboratory at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where civilian scientists working under military contracts were developing radar systems specifically designed to dominate night naval engagements. The SG Surface Search Radar represented a quantum leap beyond anything the Japanese Navy possessed or even knew was possible. Operating at wavelengths of 10 centimeters with pulse repetition frequencies of 3,000 cycles per second, the SG could detect large warships at ranges exceeding 22 miles in ideal conditions, smaller vessels at 15 miles, and provide continuous tracking of multiple targets simultaneously. More revolutionary still was the integration of radar detection with fire control systems. The Mark 8 radar installed on American destroyers could not only detect enemy ships, but direct main battery guns to engage targets completely invisible to human lookouts. The system calculated range, bearing, target speed, and course automatically, then fed firing solutions directly to gun directors. American destroyers could engage enemy formations with devastating accuracy while remaining completely invisible themselves, firing from positions Japanese lookouts could never detect using optical systems. The psychological impact on Japanese naval officers was profound and cumulative. Every night engagement from 1943 onward demonstrated American capabilities that contradicted fundamental assumptions about naval warfare learned since the Russo-Japanese War. Ships appeared on Teen Phoebe Chafritsit.42, American radar screens long before. Japanese lookouts detected any enemy presence. American formations maneuvered with coordination that seemed supernatural, responding to threats and opportunities across vast distances, with timing that suggested telepathic communication between commanders. What Japanese admirals interpreted as supernatural awareness was actually the result of systematic American investment in radar technology beginning in 1940. The Naval Research Laboratory had recognized that control of nighttime surface engagements would prove decisive in Pacific warfare, where vast distances and limited visibility created tactical conditions favoring whichever navy possessed superior detection capabilities. While Japanese shipyards concentrated on building larger guns and heavier armor, American laboratories focused on electronic systems that would make traditional advantages irrelevant. The contrast in technological priorities reflected fundamentally different approaches to naval warfare itself. Japanese doctrine emphasized individual ship capabilities, superior training, and tactical excellence within visual range. American doctrine increasingly emphasized networked operations, where multiple ships shared radar information and coordinated attacks against enemies who remained unaware they had been detected. The Battle off Samar would prove which approach was more effective when technological capabilities diverged dramatically between opposing forces. The development of American naval radar supremacy began with a critical decision made in June 1940, when President Roosevelt authorized the establishment of the National Defense Research Committee under Vannevar Bush. While Japanese naval strategists focused on perfecting night torpedo attacks and training elite crews for close-range surface engagements, American scientists were tasked with solving a more fundamental problem: how to see enemy ships before enemy ships could see them. The Radiation Laboratory at MIT, established in October 1940, brought together physicists from universities across America to develop radar systems specifically for naval warfare. The challenge was immense. Existing radar technology could detect large aircraft at modest ranges, but naval requirements demanded systems capable of detecting ships at sea level across dozens of miles of ocean while distinguishing between enemy vessels and wave clutter, rain squalls, and other natural phenomena that created false readings on early radar displays. Dr. Luis Alvarez, who would later win the Nobel Prize in Physics, led the team developing the SG Surface Search Radar that would revolutionize night naval combat. Working 18-hour days in laboratories that remained lit around the clock, Alvarez and his colleagues solved technical problems Japanese engineers never knew existed. The key breakthrough came with the development of magnetron tubes capable of generating high-powered microwave pulses at 10-centimeter wavelengths, creating radar beams that could penetrate weather conditions while providing precise target resolution. By January 1942, the first production SG radar sets were being installed aboard American destroyers. The system weighed 3,000 pounds, required a dedicated radar operator and technician, and consumed electrical power equivalent to lighting an entire city block. But its capabilities transformed night warfare completely. Operating at 3,000 megacycles with peak power output of 500 kilowatts, the SG could detect battleships at 22 miles, cruisers at 18 miles, and destroyers at 15 miles, regardless of weather, visibility, or lighting conditions. Japanese naval intelligence remained completely unaware of these developments. Through 1942 and into 1943, Imperial Navy planning documents assumed American destroyers possessed detection capabilities, roughly equivalent to Japanese optical systems. Their tactical doctrine continued emphasizing surprise night attacks launched from ranges where American lookouts would never detect approaching Japanese formations. The Type 93 Long Lance torpedo, with its 24-mile range and 1,080-pound warhead, remained the centerpiece of Japanese night fighting strategy. The first devastating demonstration of American radar superiority occurred during the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal on November 13, 1942. Rear Admiral Daniel Callahan commanded a mixed American force of cruisers and destroyers tasked with intercepting a Japanese bombardment force approaching Henderson Field under cover of darkness. Traditional naval doctrine would have required Callahan to position his ships defensively, waiting for Japanese forces to reveal their positions through muzzle flashes or searchlight illumination. Instead, American SG radar detected Admiral Hiroaki Abe's battleships at 27,000 yards, while Japanese lookouts remained completely unaware of American presence. The USS O'Bannon's radar operator tracked Japanese fleet movements for 27 minutes before American forces opened fire, providing unprecedented intelligence about enemy formation, speed, and tactical intentions. When the engagement began, American destroyers were already positioned for optimum torpedo attacks while Japanese commanders remained confused about American locations and strength. The psychological shock to Japanese naval officers was immediate and profound. Admiral Abe later described the engagement as fighting against an enemy who possessed magical knowledge of our every movement. Japanese ships found themselves under accurate gunfire from American vessels they could not see, engaging targets whose positions seemed to shift unpredictably. As American formations maneuvered using radar-directed navigation that allowed precise coordination in complete darkness, but the full implications of American radar superiority wouldn't become clear until the series of night engagements around the Solomon Islands throughout 1943. Each battle demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate fundamental laws of naval warfare as understood by Japanese commanders. American ships appeared exactly where needed to intercept Japanese formations. American gunfire achieved accuracy rates that exceeded daytime performance despite engagement ranges where visual identification was impossible. American torpedo attacks struck Japanese vessels whose crews never saw their attackers. Captain Tameichi Hara, commanding the destroyer Shigura during multiple engagements against radar-equipped American forces, provided the most detailed Japanese account of what fighting against radar-directed enemies felt like from the receiving end. In his post-war memoir, Hara described the psychological terror of facing an enemy who always knew where you were while remaining invisible themselves. American ships maneuvered with impossible precision through darkness that should have made coordination impossible. They fired with accuracy that suggested they could see our formations clearly while we groped blindly through the night. The technical specifications that enabled American radar superiority represented achievements Japanese engineers could not have imagined. The SG radar's antenna, weighing 200 pounds and rotating at 15 revolutions per minute, transmitted electromagnetic pulses that traveled at the speed of light to enemy targets, and returned with precise bearing and range information. The system's cathode ray tube display showed enemy contacts as bright dots on a circular screen, with range rings allowing operators to determine exact distances to multiple targets simultaneously. More sophisticated still was the integration of radar detection with fire control systems. The Mark 8 fire control radar, installed on American cruisers and destroyers beginning in 1943, could track individual enemy ships continuously while calculating firing solutions that accounted for target movement, range changes, and ballistic trajectories. American gun directors received automatic updates on target position every few seconds, allowing sustained accurate fire against maneuvering enemies completely invisible to optical systems. Japanese attempts to develop countermeasures proved futile because Japanese engineers fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. Early intelligence reports described American radar as an improved form of searchlight, leading Japanese technicians to develop visual camouflage and smoke screens that provided no protection against electromagnetic detection. Some Japanese commanders attempted to counter American radar by approaching at very low speeds, hoping to avoid detection by reducing their radar signatures. This tactic merely made Japanese ships easier targets for American radar operators who had unlimited time to track slow-moving contacts and coordinate attacks. The industrial scale of American radar production compounded Japanese disadvantages exponentially. By mid-1943, every American destroyer, cruiser, and battleship carried multiple radar systems providing overlapping coverage of surface, air, and fire control requirements. The Benson-class destroyers, which formed the backbone of American night fighting forces, carried SG Surface Search Radar, SC Air Search Radar, and Mark 8 Fire Control Radar, creating integrated detection and engagement capabilities. No Japanese vessel could match the manufacturing miracle that equipped every American warship with radar systems by 1943 was achieved. Through industrial mobilization, the Japanese Navy never comprehended. While Japanese shipyards struggled to produce enough destroyers to replace combat losses, American factories were mass-producing radar sets with the same efficiency they applied to automobiles and household appliances. The Western Electric Company, which had manufactured telephone equipment before the war, retooled their factories to produce SG radar systems at a rate of 50 units per month by early 1943 each. SG radar system required 2,847 individual components manufactured, to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. The magnetron tubes alone contained 17 separate elements, requiring precision assembly under controlled atmospheric conditions. Yet American production lines achieved quality control standards that ensured over 95% of completed radar sets functioned perfectly upon installation. Japanese intelligence officers who examined captured American radar equipment after the war expressed amazement at the manufacturing precision evident in every component. The training programs that created skilled radar operators represented another dimension of American superiority. Japanese planners never anticipated. The Navy Electronics Training School at Treasure Island, California, graduated 2,400 radar technicians monthly by mid-1943. Each operator completed 16 weeks of intensive training covering electromagnetic theory, equipment maintenance, target identification, and tactical coordination with gunnery personnel. By contrast, Japanese destroyer crews received minimal training in their limited radar system, with most operators learning through trial and error during actual combat operations. Lieutenant Commander Evans Carlson, who served as radar officer aboard USS Fletcher during multiple night engagements, documented the transformation of naval warfare from the American perspective. In letters to his family that were declassified in 1978, Carlson described the psychological advantages radar provided to American crews. We can see enemy formations approaching from 20 miles away while they grope blindly through the darkness. Our gunners receive precise range and bearing information continuously, while Japanese lookouts strain to spot our muzzle flashes. We coordinate attacks across our entire formation while enemy ships operate in isolation. Ships operate in isolation. The tactical revolution enabled by radar extended far beyond individual ship capabilities to encompass entire fleet operations. American task force commanders could position their vessels with mathematical precision, creating interlocking fields of fire that caught Japanese formations in carefully prepared killing zones. The engagement geometry that favored whichever Navy achieved surprise first. Contact was fundamentally altered when one side possessed detection ranges 3 times greater than their opponents. Admiral Arleigh Burke, commanding Destroyer Squadron 23 during the fierce night battles around Bougainville, developed the tactical doctrine that would dominate American night fighting for the remainder of the war. Burke's 31-knot Burke Squadron used radar-directed high-speed attacks that struck Japanese formations before enemy lookouts detected any American presence. His destroyers would approach at maximum speed from positions calculated to achieve optimum torpedo firing angles, launch coordinated attacks against multiple targets simultaneously, then withdraw at high speed before Japanese forces could organize effective responses. The effectiveness of Burke's radar-enabled tactics was demonstrated during the Battle of Cape St. George on November 25, 1943. His 5 destroyers detected a Japanese reinforcement convoy at 20,500 yards while approaching through a moonless night, with visibility reduced to less than 1,000 yards by tropical rain squalls. Using radar plotting, Burke maneuvered his formation to achieve perfect positioning for torpedo attacks against 3 Japanese destroyers that remained completely unaware of American presence until torpedoes struck their hulls. The engagement lasted 18 minutes from first radar contact to Japanese retreat. Burke's destroyers sank 2 enemy vessels and heavily damaged the 3rd, while suffering no losses and minimal damage from scattered Japanese return fire. The kill ratio of infinity to 0 was achieved through technological superiority that rendered traditional night fighting skills irrelevant. Japanese destroyer captains with decades of experience found themselves helpless against American crews who had been at sea for less than 2 years. Captain Katsumori Yamashiro, commanding the destroyer Yugiri during the Cape St. George engagement, survived the battle and provided detailed testimony about the psychological impact of fighting radar-equipped opponents. In post-war interviews, Yamashiro described the helplessness Japanese crews felt when engaging enemies they could never see. American ships appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating accuracy, and vanished before we could respond. Our lookouts were excellent. Our optical equipment was superior. Our crews were experienced. Yet we were blind children fighting against opponents who possessed supernatural vision. The development of American radar-directed night fighting doctrine was systematized through extensive training exercises conducted in Hawaiian waters throughout. 1943, destroyer squadrons practiced radar-guided attacks against target ships under conditions, replicating combat operations. The exercises revealed optimal approach courses, firing positions, and withdrawal routes that maximized American advantages while minimizing exposure to Japanese return fire. By late 1943, American destroyer crews could execute complex night attacks with clockwork precision despite operating in complete darkness. The industrial statistics that supported American radar superiority demonstrated manufacturing capabilities the Japanese Navy never possessed. By December 1943, American shipyards had installed radar systems on 847 naval vessels, including every destroyer, cruiser, and battleship in the Pacific Fleet. The total weight of radar equipment exceeded 12,000 tons, equivalent to 6 destroyers. The electrical power required to operate all radar systems simultaneously exceeded the generating capacity of most American cities. Yet naval vessels provided this power while maintaining full combat capabilities. Japanese attempts to develop comparable radar systems failed due to fundamental technological limitations and resource constraints. The Imperial Navy's Type 22 surface search radar, introduced in late 1943, achieved maximum detection ranges of only 12 miles against large targets, and suffered from poor resolution that made target identification extremely difficult. More critically, Japanese radar production never exceeded 15 units per month, ensuring that most Imperial Navy vessels would never receive radar equipment regardless of technical capabilities. The electronic warfare revolution that radar represented extended beyond detection to encompass communications and coordination between American vessels. Voice radio systems operating on multiple frequencies allowed American fleet commanders to coordinate complex night operations across dozens of ships simultaneously. Japanese forces, limited to flag signals and searchlight communications that revealed their positions to radar-equipped opponents, found themselves at decisive disadvantages in tactical coordination. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944 demonstrated the cumulative effect of American radar superiority on major fleet operations. Admiral Raymond Spruance commanded Task Force 58 with complete electronic awareness of Japanese fleet movements across hundreds of square miles of ocean. His radar operators tracked Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's mobile fleet continuously for 14 hours before the engagement began, providing intelligence that allowed perfect positioning of American carrier groups for devastating air attacks. Japanese pilots approaching. American task forces encountered defensive formations positioned with mathematical precision to maximize anti-aircraft firepower while minimizing mutual interference between friendly units. American combat air patrols intercepted Japanese attack groups at optimum ranges calculated through radar plotting of incoming threats. The resulting massacre of Japanese naval aviation was achieved through electronic superiority that rendered Japanese tactical excellence meaningless against perfectly coordinated American defenses. The psychological transformation of American naval personnel reflected their growing confidence in technological supremacy over Japanese forces. Letters and diaries from American sailors during 1943 and 1944 reveal increasingly contemptuous attitudes toward Japanese night-fighting capabilities. Where American crews had feared Japanese torpedo attacks during 1942, by 1944 they viewed night engagements as opportunities to demonstrate American technological superiority against helpless opponents. The strategic implications of American radar dominance became apparent during the Solomon Islands campaign, where control of nighttime surface operations determined the outcome of the entire theater. Japanese commanders had built their Pacific strategy around the premise that superior night-fighting capabilities would neutralize American advantages in daylight air operations and industrial production. The Tokyo Express fast cruiser and destroyer, runs that supplied Japanese garrisons and bombarded American positions, depended absolutely on achieving surprise through darkness and weather, conditions that concealed Japanese movements from American detection. Admiral Raizo Tanaka, whose destroyer squadron conducted over 40 high-speed night supply runs to Guadalcanal, initially achieved remarkable success using traditional Japanese night-fighting doctrine. His destroyers approached at maximum speed through darkness, delivered supplies or conducted bombardment, and withdrew before American forces could organize effective responses. Through November 1942, Tanaka's operations succeeded because American vessels lacked the radar capabilities necessary to detect fast-moving targets at sufficient ranges for interception. The installation of improved SG radar systems on American destroyers fundamentally altered this tactical equation. By January 1943, every American vessel in the Solomon Islands possessed detection capabilities that made Japanese surprise attacks impossible. Admiral Tanaka discovered this technological transformation during his final Tokyo Express mission on February 1, 1943, when American destroyers detected his formation at 24,000 yards and vectored intercepting forces to achieve perfect ambush positions. Tanaka's flagship destroyer, Makigumo, was struck by American torpedoes launched from positions Japanese lookouts never detected. As his ship settled by the stern with fires raging amidships, Tanaka radioed his final assessment of American radar capabilities to Combined Fleet Headquarters. Enemy possesses detection systems that render traditional night tactics obsolete. Recommend immediate development of countermeasures or abandonment of night surface operations. This message, intercepted and decoded by American intelligence, provided confirmation that Japanese commanders recognized their technological inferiority but possessed no solutions. The technical sophistication of American radar systems extended far beyond simple detection to encompass integrated combat information centers that processed multiple data sources simultaneously. The Combat Information Center concept, developed at the Naval War College and first implemented aboard USS Enterprise in early 1943, created centralized command facilities where radar operators, radio communicators, and tactical coordinators worked together to manage complex night engagements. Lieutenant Robert Copeland, who served as CIC officer aboard USS Samuel B. Roberts during the Battle off Samar, documented how American radar integration transformed tactical decision-making. In his personal account, Copeland described receiving continuous updates on enemy positions, friendly unit locations, and tactical opportunities from multiple radar operators while maintaining radio contact with all American vessels in the engagement area. We possessed complete battlefield awareness while Japanese commanders remained isolated within their individual ships, unable to coordinate effectively with supporting units. The psychological advantage this comprehensive awareness provided to American commanders was profound. Admiral Clifton Sprague, commanding the escort carrier task unit that faced Admiral Kurita's center force on October 25, 1944, could track every Japanese battleship and cruiser continuously while maneuvering his vastly outgunned force to avoid destruction. Japanese admirals commanding superior forces found themselves outmaneuvered by American commanders who possessed perfect intelligence about enemy movements and intentions. The industrial mobilization that supported American radar operations required manufacturing capabilities that dwarfed Japanese production in every category. The Sperry Corporation, which produced gyroscopic fire control systems for American naval guns, increased production from 12 units monthly in 1941 to 847 units monthly by 1944. Each fire control system incorporated radar tracking, ballistic computation, and automatic gun-laying capabilities that surpassed anything the Japanese Navy possessed or could hope to develop given their resource limitations. The training pipeline that created skilled American radar operators represented another dimension of overwhelming superiority. The Naval Training Station at Great Lakes, Illinois, processed 15,000 electronic specialists annually by 1944, each completing comprehensive courses in radar theory, equipment maintenance, and tactical applications. These technicians maintained and operated radar systems with reliability rates exceeding 90%, ensuring American vessels possessed functional detection capabilities throughout extended combat operations. Japanese destroyer crews, by contrast, received minimal training in their limited radar equipment and lacked the technical knowledge necessary for effective maintenance under combat conditions. American intelligence assessments based on captured Japanese personnel revealed that most Imperial Navy radar operators learned their duties through informal instruction from more experienced crew members, resulting in inconsistent performance and frequent equipment failures during critical engagements. The Battle of Leyte Gulf demonstrated the cumulative effect of American radar superiority across all phases of naval warfare. During the complex four-day engagement from October 23–26, 1944, American forces maintained continuous radar surveillance of Japanese fleet movements across thousands of square miles of Philippine waters. Admiral William Halsey's Third Fleet and Admiral Thomas Kinkaid's Seventh Fleet coordinated operations using radar intelligence that provided unprecedented awareness of enemy positions and intentions. Admiral Takeo Kurita's Center Force, the most powerful Japanese surface fleet assembled since Midway, found itself under constant observation from American radar systems that tracked every movement while remaining invisible to Japanese detection capabilities. When Kurita's battleships entered Leyte Gulf through San Bernardino Strait, American escort carriers received 23 minutes advance warning of their approach, allowing defensive preparations that would prove crucial to survival against overwhelming enemy firepower. The engagement off Samar on October 25th revealed the tactical revolution radar had created in surface warfare. Admiral Kurita commanded 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, and 11 destroyers against Admiral Sprague's 6 escort carriers and 7 escorts, yet found himself tactically outmaneuvered by American commanders who possessed complete electronic intelligence about Japanese movements while denying similar information to their opponents. Captain Ernest Evans, commanding USS Johnston, used radar plotting to position his destroyer for torpedo attacks against Japanese heavy cruisers from ranges where visual detection was impossible. His successful attack on the heavy cruiser Kumano was achieved through radar-directed approach and fire control that allowed precise weapon deployment despite smoke and rain squalls that reduced visibility to less than 2,000 yards. Japanese gunners attempting to engage Johnston were reduced to firing at muzzle flashes and shell splashes, while American radar operators maintained continuous tracking of target bearings and ranges. The destroyer escort USS Samuel B. Roberts achieved similar success against the battleship Chikuma using radar-directed gunfire that struck the much larger vessel repeatedly, despite the enormous disparity in firepower. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland positioned his small vessel using radar intelligence about enemy formation movement, then engaged with main battery fire directed by Mark Atord. Radar that provided accuracy equal to daylight. Gunnery, despite visibility conditions that made visual target identification impossible. The psychological impact on Japanese naval personnel of facing radar-equipped opponents was documented through interrogations of prisoners captured during Leyte Gulf operations. Commander Yoshinao Kozai, executive officer of the heavy cruiser Chokai, described the terrifying experience of being under continuous accurate fire from American vessels that remained invisible throughout the engagement. Enemy shells struck our ship with precision that suggested the Americans could see through darkness itself. Our return fire was ineffective because we never located targets except through brief muzzle flashes that disappeared immediately. The strategic consequences of American radar. Superiority extended beyond individual engagement to encompass the entire character of Pacific naval warfare. Japanese surface forces, which had dominated night operations throughout the first year of conflict, were reduced to defensive missions focused on survival rather than offensive action. The Imperial Navy's most experienced destroyer and cruiser crews, trained for decades in night-fighting techniques, found their expertise rendered obsolete by American technology that made traditional tactics suicidal. The technological gap between American and Japanese radar capabilities widened dramatically throughout 1944 as American research laboratories developed increasingly sophisticated systems while Japanese engineers remained focused on traditional optical improvements. The Mark 8 fire control radar that equipped American destroyers by mid-1944 represented advances the Japanese Navy could not comprehend, much less counter. Operating at wavelengths of 3.2 centimeters with automatic target tracking and ballistic computation, the Mark 8 provided gunnery solutions more accurate than the most experienced human gun layers could achieve under ideal conditions. Lieutenant Frank Manson, gunnery officer aboard USS Fletcher during the Battle of Vela Gulf, documented the revolution radar had created in naval gunnery accuracy. In his technical report filed after the engagement, Manson described achieving hit rates of 67% against maneuvering targets at ranges exceeding 12,000 yards during a night action, where visibility was limited to less than 1,000 yards. Our radar-directed fire control systems maintained continuous tracking of enemy vessels while calculating firing solutions automatically. Japanese return fire appeared random and uncoordinated, suggesting they were firing at muzzle flashes rather than actual target position. The industrial scale of American radar deployment became apparent through production statistics that Japanese intelligence never fully comprehended. By September 1944, American shipyards had installed radar systems worth over $2.8 billion on 1,247 naval vessels. The combined weight of radar equipment exceeded 18,000 tons, requiring electrical power generation equivalent to a medium-sized American city. Yet American naval vessels provided this power while maintaining full combat capabilities and operational endurance that exceeded Japanese vessels. Lacking such electronic systems, the Western Electric Company alone produced 847 complete SG radar systems monthly by late 1944, each requiring 2,847 precision components manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. The quality control procedures ensuring reliable performance under combat conditions exceeded standards applied to aircraft engines or precision optical instruments. American radar systems functioned effectively after sustaining battle damage that would disable most mechanical equipment, providing American crews with reliable detection capabilities even during intense combat operations. Japanese attempts to develop radar countermeasures failed because Japanese engineers fundamentally misunderstood the physics underlying American radar systems. Early Japanese intelligence reports described American radar as an improved form of searchlight, leading to development of visual camouflage and smoke screens that provided no protection against electromagnetic detection. Some Japanese commanders attempted metallic chaff dispensing systems, but their limited understanding of radar wavelengths and beam characteristics made these countermeasures completely ineffective against American detection systems. The training programs that created skilled American radar operators represented systematic educational efforts the Japanese Navy never attempted. The Naval Electronics School at Treasure Island graduated 3,200 radar technicians monthly by 1944, each completing 20 weeks of intensive instruction covering electromagnetic theory, equipment maintenance, target identification, and tactical coordination with weapon systems. These specialists maintained American radar systems with reliability rates exceeding 95%, while developing innovative tactical applications that exceeded manufacturer specifications. Admiral Arleigh Burke's Destroyer Squadron 23 demonstrated the tactical revolution radar-directed operations represented during their legendary night engagements around Bougainville. Burke's squadron achieved kill ratios exceeding 10-1 against experienced Japanese destroyer crews using radar-coordinated attacks that struck enemy formations before Japanese lookouts detected any American presence. The engagement off Cape St. George on November 25, 1943, resulted in complete destruction of a Japanese destroyer force, while Burke's ships suffered no losses and minimal damage. Captain Kenjiro Notomi, commanding the destroyer Onami during the Cape St. George engagement, provided detailed testimony about the psychological impact of facing radar-equipped opponents. In post-war interviews, Notomi described the helplessness Japanese crews experienced when engaging enemies they could never see. American ships maneuvered with impossible precision through complete darkness, striking our formation with coordinated attacks that seemed to anticipate our every movement. Our superior night vision training and optical equipment provided no advantages against opponents who possessed electronic eyes that penetrated darkness itself. The development of American radar-directed tactical doctrine was systematized through extensive exercises conducted at the Pacific Fleet Training Center in Hawaiian waters. Destroyer squadrons practiced radar-guided night attacks against target ships under conditions replicating combat operations, refining approach courses, firing positions, and withdrawal routes that maximized American technological advantages while minimizing exposure to Japanese return fire. These exercises revealed that properly trained American crews could execute complex night operations with precision exceeding daylight performance. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944 demonstrated how radar superiority had transformed carrier warfare as fundamentally as surface engagements. Admiral Raymond Spruance's Task Force 58 possessed complete electronic awareness of Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's mobile fleet across hundreds of square miles of ocean, tracking Japanese movements continuously for 18 hours before launching coordinated airstrikes that achieved devastating surprise. American radar operators detected Japanese scout planes at ranges exceeding 150 miles while maintaining continuous surveillance of enemy carrier movement, providing intelligence that allowed perfect positioning of American task forces for maximum tactical advantage. Japanese pilots approaching American formations encountered defensive fighters vectored to interception courses calculated through radar plotting of incoming threats, resulting in aerial combat where American pilots possessed complete situational awareness while Japanese crews remained isolated and confused. The industrial statistics supporting American radar operations demonstrated manufacturing capabilities that exceeded Japanese production in every measurable category. The Westinghouse Corporation produced 1,247 radar sets monthly by mid-1944, each incorporating vacuum tubes, precision mechanisms, and electronic components requiring specialized manufacturing techniques Japanese industry could not duplicate. The electrical power requirements for operating all American naval radar systems simultaneously exceeded the generating capacity of most Japanese cities. Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell, commanding Air Group 15 aboard USS Essex, documented how radar-directed fighter interceptions transformed carrier air defense during the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot on June 19, 1944. American radar operators provided continuous tracking of incoming Japanese attack groups while vectoring defensive fighters to achieve optimal interception positions. The resulting aerial engagement destroyed 426 Japanese aircraft, while American losses totaled only 29 planes, a kill ratio exceeding 14.1 achieved through electronic superiority that rendered Japanese tactical excellence meaningless. Japanese pilot Lieutenant Zenji Abe, who participated in multiple attacks against American carrier task forces during the Philippine Sea Battle, described the psychological terror of facing radar-directed defenses. American fighters appeared exactly where needed to intercept our formations, approaching from optimum attack angles with timing that suggested supernatural awareness of our intentions. Our most experienced pilots were shot down by American crews who seemed to possess magical knowledge of aerial combat conditions. The strategic implications of American radar supremacy extended beyond tactical advantages to encompass fundamental changes in naval warfare doctrine. Japanese surface forces, which had dominated night operations during the early Pacific campaigns, were reduced to defensive missions focused on survival rather than offensive action. The Imperial Navy's most experienced destroyer commanders, trained for decades in traditional night fighting techniques, found their expertise rendered obsolete by American technology that made conventional tactics suicidal against radar-equipped opponents. The electronic warfare revolution that radar represented transformed American naval operations from reactive to proactive, allowing American commanders to position their forces with mathematical precision while denying similar advantages to Japanese opponents. The engagement geometry that had historically favored whichever navy achieved surprise through superior seamanship was fundamentally altered when one side possessed detection ranges triple those of their enemies and coordination capabilities that approached telepathic efficiency. The nighttime massacre at Iron Bottom Sound on November 14-15, 1942 marked the definitive moment when Japanese naval commanders realized they faced technological capabilities beyond their comprehension. Admiral Nobutake Kondo's bombardment force approached Henderson Field with supreme confidence, having achieved devastating success in previous night operations against American forces lacking effective detection systems. His battleships, Kirishima and Hiei, accompanied by 4 cruisers and 9 destroyers, represented the most powerful surface force Japan had committed to Guadalcanal operations. Waiting in the darkness was Rear Admiral Willis Lee's Task Force 64, centered on the battleships USS Washington and USS South Dakota, supported by 4 destroyers equipped with the latest SG radar systems. Lee's force possessed complete electronic awareness of Japanese movements from the moment Kondo's ships entered Iron Bottom Sound, tracking every enemy vessel continuously while remaining completely invisible to Japanese optical detection system. Despite the clear tropical night and excellent visibility conditions, the engagement that followed demonstrated the revolution American radar had created in naval gunnery. USS Washington's main battery, directed by Mark 8 fire control radar, achieved devastating accuracy against the Japanese battleship Kirishima at a range of 8,400 yards. 9 16-inch shells struck the Japanese vessel in less than 7 minutes, penetrating her armor and causing catastrophic damage that forced abandonment within 30 minutes. Kirishima's return fire, directed by optical range-finding systems, achieved no hits on Washington despite favorable gunnery conditions and experienced Japanese crews. Captain Iwabuchi Sanji, commanding Kirishima during this engagement, provided testimony that captured the psychological shock Japanese naval officers experienced when facing radar-directed American gunnery. In his final radio transmission before abandoning ship, Iwabuchi reported, "Enemy achieves impossible accuracy in complete darkness. Our optical systems detect no target, yet enemy shells strike with precision, suggesting daylight conditions. Request immediate investigation of American night vision capabilities. The technical superiority that enabled Washington's devastating performance represented advances in fire control technology the Japanese Navy could not duplicate or even understand. The Mark 8 radar system provided continuous tracking of target bearing, range, and movement, while automatically calculating ballistic solutions that accounted for wind, temperature, barrel wear, and ammunition variations. The system's accuracy exceeded human capabilities under any condition, achieving hit rates that surpassed peacetime target practice results despite combat conditions that included maneuvering targets, return fire, and battle damage. American radar operators aboard Washington maintained perfect target tracking throughout the engagement, while Japanese optical rangefinders struggled to detect American vessels through gun smoke and cordite haze. The psychological advantage this provided to American crews was immense. Gun crews fired with confidence that every salvo was accurately directed, while knowing their own ship remained invisible to enemy detection systems. Japanese crews fired desperately at muzzle flashes and radar plots while suffering devastating, accurate return fire from opponents they could never locate. The industrial miracle that equipped every American major combatant with radar systems was achieved through manufacturing mobilization the Japanese economy could never have supported. The General Electric Company retooled their Schenectady plant to produce Mark 8 fire control radars at a rate of 47 units monthly by late 1942. Each system required 3,247 precision components manufactured to tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch, yet production quality remained so consistent that over 98% of completed systems functioned perfectly upon installation. The training programs that created skilled American radar operators represented educational efforts that exceeded Japanese naval training in scope and sophistication. The Fire Control School at Dam Neck, Virginia, graduated 1,200 radar technicians. Monthly by mid-1943, each completing 14 weeks of intensive instruction covering electromagnetic theory, mechanical maintenance, target tracking, and tactical coordination with gunnery personnel. These specialists maintained American fire control systems with reliability rates that exceeded mechanical equipment while developing tactical innovations that enhanced system performance beyond manufacturer's specifications. Lieutenant William Bush, radar officer aboard USS Washington during the Second Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, documented the transformation radar had created in naval warfare from the American perspective. In his technical report, filed after the engagement, Bush described achieving target lock on Japanese battleships at ranges exceeding 18,000 yards, while tracking multiple enemy vessels simultaneously through automated systems that provided continuous updates on tactical situations. Our radar operators possessed complete battlefield awareness, while Japanese commanders remained isolated within individual ships, lacking effective coordination or intelligence about American positions. The strategic implications of American radar superiority were immediately recognized by Japanese naval intelligence officers who analyzed the Guadalcanal engagements. Captain Kameto Kuroshima, operations officer for the combined fleet, filed a comprehensive assessment in December 1942 that accurately predicted the consequences of continued American technological advantages. Enemy radar capabilities have fundamentally altered the character of night surface warfare. Traditional Japanese advantages in optical systems and crew training are negated by American electronic detection ranges that exceed visual capabilities by factors of 3 or 4. Recommend immediate development of comparable systems or abandonment of night surface operations. Kuroshima's recommendations were never implemented because Japanese industry lacked the manufacturing capabilities necessary to produce radar systems comparable to American equipment. The vacuum tubes required for high-powered radar transmitters exceeded Japanese production capacity even when military needs received absolute priority. The precision manufacturing techniques necessary for radar components required machine tools and metallurgical processes that Japanese factories could not duplicate, despite access to captured American equipment and technical documentation. The Battle of the Komandorsky Islands on March 26, 1943, provided further demonstration of American radar superiority in surface engagement. Rear Admiral Charles McMorris commanded a small force of 2 cruisers and 4 destroyers that intercepted a much larger Japanese convoy protected by 2 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 4 destroyers. Despite being significantly outgunned, McMorris achieved tactical success through radar-directed operations that allowed perfect positioning for maximum gunnery effectiveness while minimizing exposure to Japanese return. Fire American SG radar detected the Japanese force at 20,000 yards, while Japanese optical systems remained unaware of American presence despite excellent weather conditions and unlimited visibility. This detection advantage allowed McMorris to position his ships for optimal gunnery angles while forcing Japanese commanders to react to American movements they could not predict or counter effectively. The engagement lasted over 3 hours, with American forces achieving superior hit rates despite facing more numerous and more heavily armed opponents. Vice Admiral Boshiro Hosogaya, commanding the Japanese force at Komandorsky, withdrew after sustaining heavy damage to his flagship heavy cruiser, Nachi, despite possessing overwhelming firepower advantages. His after-action report to Combined Fleet Headquarters described the psychological impact of engaging radar-equipped American forces. Enemy vessels maneuvered with impossible precision while maintaining accurate gunnery throughout extended engagement. Our superior numbers and firepower provided no tactical advantages against opponents who possessed complete awareness of our movements while denying similar intelligence about their positions. The technical sophistication of American radar systems extended beyond detection and fire control to encompass integrated combat information centers that revolutionized naval command and control. The CIC concept, first implemented aboard USS Enterprise in early 1943, created centralized facilities where radar operators, communications personnel, and tactical coordinators processed multiple information sources simultaneously to maintain comprehensive battlefield awareness. Captain Miles Browning, who served as CIC officer aboard Enterprise during multiple Pacific engagements, documented how integrated radar systems transformed tactical decision-making at the task force level. In his operational reports, Browning described coordinating complex multi-ship operations through radar intelligence that provided continuous updates on friendly and enemy positions across hundreds of square miles of ocean. We possessed godlike awareness of tactical situations, while enemy commanders remained blind to developments beyond visual range of their individual ships. The psychological transformation of American naval personnel reflected growing confidence in technological superiority over Japanese forces. Letters and diaries from American sailors during 1943 reveal increasingly contemptuous attitudes toward Japanese night-fighting capabilities. Where American crews had feared Japanese torpedo attacks during early Pacific engagements, by mid-1943 they viewed night battles as opportunities to demonstrate American radar superiority against helpless opponents who possessed no effective countermeasures. The development of American radar-guided torpedo attacks represented perhaps the most devastating tactical innovation Japanese naval commanders never anticipated. While Japanese doctrine emphasized visual torpedo launches at close range using superior optical equipment and crew training, American destroyers were developing techniques for radar-directed torpedo attacks from ranges where Japanese lookouts could never detect launching vessels. The geometric advantages this provided were revolutionary, allowing American ships to achieve perfect firing positions while remaining completely invisible to their targets. Commander Arleigh Burke pioneered these tactics during his legendary night engagements as commander of Destroyer Squadron 23. Burke's ships used SG radar to plot enemy formations continuously, while maneuvering to achieve optimal torpedo firing angles without visual contact. His destroyers could launch coordinated attacks against multiple targets simultaneously, timing torpedo runs to achieve maximum destructive effect while withdrawing at high speed before Japanese forces could organize effective responses. The Battle of Empress, Augusta Bay on November 2, 1943, demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of radar-directed torpedo warfare. Burke's squadron detected Admiral Sentaro Omori's cruiser force at 15,500 yards, while approaching through darkness and rain squalls that reduced visibility to less than 800 yards. Using radar plotting, Burke positioned his destroyers for simultaneous torpedo attacks against 3 Japanese cruisers, while enemy lookouts remained completely unaware of American presence. The torpedo attack lasted 4 minutes from launch to impact. Burke's destroyers fired 27 torpedoes in coordinated salvos, timed to strike all Japanese vessels simultaneously, achieving complete surprise against an enemy force that never detected the attacking ships. The heavy cruiser Sendai exploded and sank within 8 minutes after taking multiple torpedo hits. The light cruiser Agano suffered severe damage that disabled her main armament and reduced speed to 12 knots. The destroyer Hatsukaze broke in half after a single torpedo detonated her forward magazine. Captain Kiyoshi Kukawa, commanding the destroyer Samadar during the Empress Augusta Bay engagement, survived the battle and provided detailed testimony about the psychological terror of facing radar-directed torpedo attacks. In post-war interviews, Kikawa described the helplessness Japanese crews experienced when torpedoes appeared from nowhere without any warning of approaching enemy vessels. American destroyers struck like invisible assassins, launching devastating attacks from positions we never detected. Our lookouts were excellent. Our optical equipment was superior, yet we were blind victims of enemies who possessed supernatural targeting capabilities. The technical specifications that enabled American radar-directed torpedo attacks represented advances in fire control integration the Japanese Navy could not comprehend. The torpedo data computer installed on American destroyers automatically calculated firing solutions based on radar tracking data, accounting for target speed, bearing changes, torpedo running time, and optimal spread patterns. The system achieved accuracy rates exceeding 80% under combat conditions, compared to less than 20% for visual torpedo attacks against maneuvering targets. American torpedo manufacturing capabilities compounded Japanese disadvantages through production, volumes that exceeded Imperial Navy requirements by enormous margins. The Naval Torpedo Station at Newport, Rhode Island, produced Mark 15 torpedoes at a rate of 240 units monthly by mid-1943, each incorporating precision gyroscopic guidance systems and magnetic contact exploder mechanisms that ensured reliable detonation. Japanese torpedo production never exceeded 40 units monthly, despite desperate shortages that limited destroyer operations. The strategic implications of American radar superiority in torpedo warfare fundamentally altered Japanese tactical doctrine throughout the Pacific theater. Imperial Navy destroyer crews, trained for decades in close-range night torpedo attacks using visual targeting methods, found their expertise rendered obsolete by American detection systems that made traditional approaches suicidal. Japanese destroyers attempting to close within visual torpedo range were detected and engaged by radar-directed gunfire long before reaching effective attack positions. Vice Admiral Reizo Tanaka, whose destroyer squadron conducted over 60 night operations during the Solomon Islands campaign, documented the transformation of Japanese tactics in response to American radar capabilities. In his classified reports to Combined Fleet Headquarters, Tanaka described abandoning traditional torpedo attack doctrine in favor of high-speed supply runs that minimized exposure to American detection systems. Enemy radar makes conventional destroyer attacks impossible. We must avoid engagement entirely or face certain destruction by opponents who possess complete tactical awareness while we remain blind. The Battle of Vella Gulf on August 6, 1943, provided the most complete demonstration of American radar dominance in destroyer warfare. Commander Frederick Moosbrugger's 6 destroyers intercepted 4 Japanese destroyers conducting a supply run to Kolombangara using radar detection at maximum range while approaching through weather conditions that made visual contact impossible. The engagement lasted 23 minutes from first radar contact to Japanese withdrawal, resulting in complete destruction of the enemy force without American losses. Moosbrugger's tactical execution exemplified radar-directed destroyer operations, perfected through months of Pacific combat experience. His ships maintained radar contact with Japanese formations while maneuvering to achieve optimal firing positions for both torpedo and gunfire attacks. American destroyers launched 31 torpedoes in coordinated salvos while simultaneously engaging with main battery fire directed by Mark 8 radar, achieving devastating concentration of firepower against enemies who never located their attackers. The psychological impact on Japanese destroyer crews was documented through intercepted radio transmissions. During the Vella Gulf engagement, the Japanese destroyer Hajikaze transmitted desperate requests for tactical guidance as American shells struck her superstructure with impossible accuracy despite visibility conditions that prevented visual target identification. Enemy achieves precise gunnery in complete darkness. Request instructions for countering invisible opponents. This transmission was cut short when radar-directed American fire destroyed the ship's communications equipment. Lieutenant Yoshiaki Inoguchi, commanding the destroyer Arashi during multiple engagements against radar-equipped American forces, provided comprehensive testimony about the evolution of Japanese destroyer tactics in response to American technological superiority. In his post-war memoir, Inoguchi described the psychological transformation Japanese crews experienced as they realized their traditional advantages had been negated by American electronic systems. During 1942, our destroyer crews possessed supreme confidence in night-fighting capabilities developed through years of intensive training. Our Type 93 long-lance torpedoes could destroy any enemy vessel at ranges exceeding 20 miles. Our optical equipment was superior to American systems. Our crews were more experienced in night operations. We expected to dominate surface warfare through darkness that negated American industrial advantages. By mid-1943, these expectations had been completely reversed. American destroyers detected our formations at ranges where we could never see them. American torpedoes struck our ships before we knew enemies were present. American gunfire achieved accuracy that exceeded our best performance under ideal conditions while we fired blindly at muzzle flashes. We realized we faced technological capabilities that made our training and experience irrelevant. The development of American radar-guided anti-aircraft warfare represented another dimension of electronic superiority that Japanese naval aviation never comprehended or effectively countered. The Mark 12 and Mark 22, T-22, radar systems installed on American cruisers and destroyers provided continuous tracking of incoming aircraft while directing anti-aircraft guns with mechanical precision that exceeded human capabilities under any conditions. Captain David McCampbell, commanding Air Group 15, FEEN during operations around the Philippines, documented the revolution radar had created in naval air defense from the attacking pilot's perspective. In his combat reports, McCampbell described approaching American task forces that seemed to possess supernatural awareness of incoming threats, positioning defensive fighters and coordinating anti-aircraft fire with timing that suggested telepathic communication between all defensive units. American ships maneuvered in perfect coordination to maximize anti-aircraft coverage while vectoring defensive fighters to optimal interception positions. Their radar operators tracked our formations continuously while providing intelligence that allowed devastating concentration of defensive firepower. Japanese attack groups faced integrated defenses that responded to threats with machine-like precision and coordination impossible through human command systems alone. The industrial statistics supporting American radar-directed anti-aircraft operations demonstrated manufacturing capabilities that exceeded Japanese production by orders of magnitude. The Chrysler Corporation retooled their Detroit tank plant to produce 40mm anti-aircraft guns at a rate of 500 units monthly, each incorporating radar-directed fire control systems that automatically tracked aerial targets while computing firing solutions. American anti-aircraft ammunition production exceeded 2.4 million rounds monthly by 1944, ensuring sustained defensive operations throughout extended combat periods. The culmination of American radar supremacy was demonstrated during the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot on June 19, 1944, when Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's mobile fleet launched the largest carrier-based air attack in Japanese naval history against Admiral Raymond Spruance's Task Force 58. What Japanese planners envisioned as a decisive battle that would cripple American carrier aviation instead became a massacre that destroyed Japanese naval air power permanently, achieved through radar-directed defenses that rendered Japanese tactical excellence meaningless. Against perfectly coordinated American operations, Admiral Ozawa commanded 9 aircraft carriers with 473 operational aircraft, including many of Japan's most experienced pilots and newest fighter designs. His battle plan assumed American carriers would be vulnerable to coordinated attacks launched from multiple directions, overwhelming defensive fighters through sheer numbers while achieving surprise through careful timing and approach routes designed to confuse American defensive coordination. Japanese intelligence estimates suggested American radar capabilities were limited to basic detection, failing to comprehend the integrated combat information systems that provided Task Force 58 with complete tactical awareness. The reality, Ozawa's pilots encountered contradicted every assumption about American defensive capabilities. Task Force 58's radar operators detected incoming Japanese attack groups at ranges exceeding 150 miles while tracking individual formations with precision that allowed perfect positioning of defensive fighters and anti-aircraft assets. American combat air patrols were vectored to interception, courses calculated through radar, plotting that placed them in optimal positions to engage Japanese formations before they could coordinate attacks. Against the carrier task forces, Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer, commanding Fighter Squadron 51 aboard USS San Jacinto, documented the revolution radar direction had created in carrier air defense. In his post-mission reports, Brewer described receiving continuous tactical updates from shipboard radar operators who tracked both friendly and enemy aircraft simultaneously while coordinating defensive operations across multiple carrier groups. We possessed complete awareness of tactical situations while Japanese pilots remained isolated within individual formations, lacking intelligence about American defensive positions or coordination between enemy units. The technical sophistication of American radar-directed fighter control represented advances the Japanese Navy never achieved despite 3 years of intensive combat experience. The combat information centers installed on American carriers processed radar data from multiple ships simultaneously, creating comprehensive tactical pictures that allowed precise coordination of defensive operations across hundreds of square miles of ocean. Fighter directors could vector individual American aircraft to specific interception points while maintaining awareness of overall tactical developments and enemy intentions. Overall tactical developments and enemy intentions. The slaughter that resulted from this technological superiority was unprecedented in carrier warfare. During the first major attack wave, Japanese formations lost 42 aircraft out of 69 launched, while American losses totaled only 1 fighter destroyed and 2 damaged. The second attack wave suffered even worse casualties, with 98 Japanese aircraft shot down out of 130 launched, while American defensive losses remained minimal. By the end of the day, Japanese carrier aviation had lost 426 aircraft and most of their experienced aircrew, while American losses totaled 29 planes. Achieving a kill ratio exceeding 14.1, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack and participated in most major Japanese carrier operations, witnessed the Marianas battle as a staff officer aboard Admiral Ozawa's flagship. In his post-war memoir, Fuchida described the psychological shock Japanese commanders experienced when their most carefully planned offensive operation was destroyed by Americans, defenses that seemed to anticipate every tactical move. American fighters appeared exactly where needed to intercept our attack groups, approaching from optimal angles with timing that suggested supernatural awareness of our intentions. Their radar operators directed defensive operations with precision that exceeded our best tactical coordination while maintaining perfect knowledge of our formations and attack plans. We realized we faced technological capabilities that rendered our experience and training obsolete against enemies who possessed godlike battlefield awareness. The radar-directed anti-aircraft fire that supplemented American fighter defenses achieved accuracy rates the Japanese Navy had never encountered or imagined possible. The Mark 37 fire control systems installed on American cruisers and destroyers tracked incoming aircraft automatically, while computing firing solutions that accounted for target speed, altitude, course changes, and ballistic trajectories. These systems achieved hit rates exceeding 30% under combat conditions, compared to less than 5% for manually directed anti-aircraft fire. Ensign Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's leading fighter aces who participated in attacks against American carrier task forces during the Philippine Sea Battle, provided detailed testimony about the psychological impact of facing radar-directed defenses. In his memoir, Sakai described the terror Japanese pilots experienced when approaching American formations that seemed to possess complete awareness of attacking aircraft while coordinating defenses with mechanical precision. American anti-aircraft fire achieved accuracy that exceeded our expectations under any conditions. Their gunners tracked individual aircraft through evasive maneuvers while maintaining devastating concentration of fire that destroyed entire formations. We could not understand how enemy gunners achieved such precision without visual contact, or how they coordinated fire from multiple ships to create interlocking defensive patterns that made penetration impossible. The strategic consequences of the Marianas Turkey shoot extended far beyond the immediate tactical results to encompass the permanent destruction of Japanese carrier aviation capabilities. The 426 aircraft and experienced aircrew lost during June 19, 1944, represented resources the Japanese Navy could never replace, given their limited training programs and industrial constraints. More critically, the psychological impact on surviving Japanese pilots created demoralization that affected all subsequent carrier operations. The industrial miracle that supported American radar operations during the Philippine Sea Battle demonstrated manufacturing capabilities that exceeded Japanese production in every measurable category. Task Force 58's 15 aircraft carriers carried radar equipment worth over $47 million, requiring electrical power generation equivalent to a major American city, while maintaining full combat capabilities throughout extended operations. The vacuum tubes alone used in American radar systems exceeded Japan's total annual production of all electronic components. Admiral Ozawa's final assessment of the Philippine Sea engagement, filed in his classified report to Combined Fleet Headquarters, accurately recognized the technological revolution that had destroyed Japanese carrier aviation. Enemy radar capabilities have fundamentally altered carrier warfare beyond our ability to counter with existing resources. American defensive coordination achieves perfection that exceeds human capabilities while denying us the surprise and concentration necessary for successful attacks. Recommend immediate development of comparable electronic systems or abandonment of carrier offensive operations. The radar-directed night fighter operations that American carriers developed during 1944 represented another dimension of technological superiority Japanese aviation never comprehended. American night fighters equipped with airborne radar could intercept Japanese aircraft in complete darkness, achieving kills against opponents who never detected their attackers. The Grumman F-6F Hellcat night fighters achieved success rates exceeding 80% against Japanese aircraft attempting night attacks on American task forces. Lieutenant Commander Edward O'Hare, commanding Night Fighter Squadron 6 aboard USS Enterprise, documented the revolution airborne radar had created in carrier-based night operations. In his tactical reports, O'Hare described intercepting Japanese attack groups in complete darkness using airborne radar that provided precise targeting information while denying enemy pilots any awareness of approaching American fighters. Our Kanintraitan radar-equipped night fighters possessed complete tactical advantage against Japanese aircraft that remained blind to our presence until our guns opened fire. The psychological transformation of American naval aviation personnel reflected growing confidence in technological superiority over Japanese forces. Combat reports and personal letters from American carrier pilots during 1944 reveal increasingly contemptuous attitudes toward Japanese aviation capabilities. Where American aircrews had respected Japanese pilot skills during early Pacific engagements, by mid-1944 they viewed air combat as target practice against helpless opponents who possessed no effective countermeasures to American radar-directed operations. The Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944 provided the final demonstration of American radar supremacy in carrier warfare. Admiral William Halsey's Task Force 38 detected Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's northern force at maximum radar range while tracking Japanese movements continuously for over 12 hours before launching coordinated airstrikes that achieved complete surprise. Japanese carriers, lacking effective radar warning systems, were caught completely unprepared for American attacks that destroyed their remaining aviation capabilities. The technical sophistication of American radar integration aboard aircraft carriers represented achievements Japanese engineers could never duplicate, given their resource limitations and technological constraints. The Mark 12 and Mark 22 radar systems provided overlapping coverage of air search, surface search, and fire control requirements while feeding information to combat information centers that processed multiple data sources simultaneously to maintain comprehensive tactical awareness. The final phase of American radar dominance was demonstrated during the kamikaze campaigns of 1945, when desperate Japanese tactics designed to overwhelm American defenses through mass sacrifice instead revealed the ultimate futility of conventional aircraft against radar-directed defensive systems. Admiral Takejiro Onishi's Special Attack Units represented Japan's acknowledgement that traditional naval aviation could no longer penetrate American defenses, yet even these suicide tactics proved ineffective against radar capabilities that detected incoming threats at ranges exceeding 100 miles while coordinating defensive responses with mechanical precision. The Battle of Okinawa from April through June 1945 showcased the complete evolution of American radar-directed naval defense systems. Admiral Raymond Spruance's Task Force 58 faced over 1,900 kamikaze attacks during the 3-month campaign, yet achieved defensive success rates that rendered Japanese sacrifice tactics strategically meaningless. American radar operators detected incoming kamikaze formations at maximum range, while vectoring defensive fighters and coordinating anti-aircraft fire to create interlocking defensive zones that few Japanese aircraft could penetrate. Commander David McCampbell, now serving as Air Operations Officer aboard USS Essex, documented the systematic destruction of Japanese kamikaze attacks through radar-directed defenses. In his operational reports, McCampbell described achieving kill rates exceeding 90% against incoming suicide aircraft through defensive coordination that tracked individual Japanese planes continuously, while directing multiple interceptors to engage targets with mathematical precision. Our radar systems provided such complete tactical awareness that kamikaze attacks became predictable exercises in target destruction rather than serious threats to task force operations. The technical sophistication of American radar integration had evolved far beyond the systems that dominated earlier Pacific engagements. The Mark 25 radar installed on American carriers by 1945 could track over 100 individual aircraft simultaneously, while automatically identifying friendly versus enemy contacts and prioritizing threats based on approach courses and attack probabilities. These systems processed tactical information faster than human operators could analyze, providing defensive coordination that approached artificial intelligence in effectiveness. Lieutenant Commander John Thatch, who developed the defensive fighter tactics that bears his name, adapted his techniques to exploit radar capabilities during kamikaze defense operations. Thatch's radar-directed beam defense positioned fighter aircraft at calculated altitudes and bearings to intercept incoming suicide attacks at optimal ranges while maintaining perfect coordination between multiple defensive layers. His pilots achieved kill ratios exceeding 20.1 against kamikaze aircraft despite facing opponents willing to die for individual attacks. The psychological impact on Japanese kamikaze pilots of facing radar-directed defenses was documented through captured diaries and final letters recovered from crashed aircraft. Ensign Yukio Seki, who led the first organized kamikaze attack against American carriers, wrote in his final diary entry, "American defenses achieve perfection that exceeds human capabilities. Their fighters appear exactly where needed to intercept our formations, while their gunfire achieves accuracy that destroys aircraft before pilots can complete attacks. We face enemies who possess supernatural awareness of our intentions combined, with defensive coordination that makes successful attacks impossible." The industrial scale of American radar deployment during the Okinawa campaign demonstrated manufacturing achievements that exceeded the productive capacity of most nations. Task Force 58's aircraft carriers and supporting vessels carried radar equipment worth over $89 million, requiring maintenance personnel who exceeded the total number of electronics specialists in the Japanese Navy. American radar systems operated continuously throughout 3 months of intensive combat while maintaining reliability rates that exceeded peacetime standards. The strategic futility of kamikaze tactics against radar-equipped American forces became apparent through statistical analysis of attack results. Despite launching 1,900 individual suicide attacks during the Okinawa campaign, Japanese forces sank only 36 American vessels while damaging 368 others. The exchange ratio of 53 kamikaze aircraft per American ship sunk, represented strategic failure that consumed Japan's remaining aviation resources without achieving meaningful tactical results. Admiral Matome Ugaki, who commanded the final kamikaze operations from Kyushu Airfield, documented the psychological collapse of Japanese aviation personnel when confronted with the mathematical certainty of failure against American radar defenses. In his personal diary, Ugaki described watching successive kamikaze missions achieve negligible results despite extraordinary pilot sacrifice and careful tactical planning. American radar capabilities have rendered aviation attacks obsolete, regardless of pilot courage or tactical innovation. Our most dedicated personnel face certain death against defensive systems that destroy attacking aircraft with mechanical efficiency. The radar-directed close-in weapon systems that American ships, developed during 1945, represented the final evolution of electronic defensive integration. The Mark 51 fire control systems installed on destroyers and cruisers could engage individual kamikaze aircraft at ranges under 2,000 yards while tracking multiple targets simultaneously and computing firing solutions automatically. These systems achieved hit rates approaching 100% against aircraft that penetrated outer defensive layers, ensuring that even successful kamikaze penetration rarely resulted in ship destruction. Captain Frederick Sherman, commanding the carrier task group that included USS Essex during the heaviest kamikaze attacks, documented how radar integration had transformed naval defensive operations beyond recognition from pre-war concepts. In his tactical assessments, Sherman described achieving defensive effectiveness that exceeded theoretical maximum capabilities through electronic coordination that processed tactical information faster than human. Commanders could analyze while directing responses with precision impossible through manual systems. Our radar-directed defenses operate with machine-like efficiency that destroys incoming threats automatically while maintaining perfect awareness of tactical situations across hundreds of square miles of ocean. Japanese kamikaze pilots face defensive systems that respond to individual aircraft with calculated precision while coordinating responses between dozens of ships and hundreds of fighter aircraft. The human element in naval defense has been largely replaced by electronic systems that exceed biological capabilities in every measurable parameter. The final demonstration of American radar supremacy occurred during the Japanese surrender ceremonies in Tokyo Bay, when Admiral William Halsey's Third Fleet anchored within sight of Mount Fuji, while maintaining complete electronic surveillance of all Japanese military installations within 200 miles. American radar operators tracked every Japanese aircraft movement while monitoring all naval facilities and military communications, demonstrating technological dominance that rendered Japanese military resistance impossible even if political leadership had chosen to continue fighting. The post-war analysis of American radar capabilities, conducted by Japanese technical intelligence, revealed the enormous scope of technological advantages that had determined Pacific War outcomes. Japanese engineers who examined captured American radar equipment expressed amazement at manufacturing precision and electronic sophistication that exceeded their understanding of achievable technology. The vacuum tubes alone used in American radar systems incorporated metallurgical advances Japanese industry could not duplicate despite access to complete technical documentation. Commander Minoru Genda, who had planned the Pearl Harbor attack and served as one of Japan's leading aviation tactical experts, provided the most comprehensive Japanese assessment of American radar supremacy in his post-war interviews with American historians. Genda's analysis accurately identified radar as the decisive factor that had rendered Japanese naval aviation obsolete despite superior individual aircraft performance and pilot training during early war periods. American radar capabilities fundamentally altered naval warfare beyond our ability to comprehend or counter with available resources. Their electronic systems provided tactical awareness that exceeded human capabilities while coordinating defensive operations with precision that approached perfection. Japanese aviation faced enemies who possessed godlike knowledge of our intentions combined with defensive coordination that made successful attacks mathematically impossible, regardless of pilot skill or tactical innovation. The strategic implications of American radar dominance extended beyond immediate military applications to encompass the complete transformation of naval warfare, doctrine for all future conflicts. The lessons learned during Pacific operations established electronic warfare as the primary determinant of naval superiority, rendering traditional advantages in ship design, crew training, and tactical doctrine secondary to possession of superior detection and coordination. Systems. The technological revolution that radar represented would influence naval development for decades following World War II, establishing principles that remain fundamental to modern naval operations. The side possessing superior electronic capabilities would achieve decisive advantages in detection, coordination, and tactical execution that human skill and courage could not overcome through conventional methods. The post-war interrogation of Japanese naval officers revealed the profound psychological trauma inflicted by facing radar-equipped American forces throughout the Pacific Campaign. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, who had commanded the Pearl Harbor Strike Force and witnessed the complete destruction of Japanese carrier aviation, provided testimony that captured the existential shock experienced by Imperial Navy leadership when confronted with American technological capabilities they could neither understand nor counter. We entered the war, believing our superior training, tactical doctrine, and combat experience would overcome American advantages in industrial production. Nagumo stated during extensive debriefings conducted by American intelligence officers in 1946. By 1943, we realized we faced technological capabilities that rendered our expertise meaningless. American radar systems provided our enemies with supernatural awareness of our movements, while denying us similar intelligence about their positions and intentions. We fought blind against opponents who possessed godlike vision. The technical analysis conducted by Japanese engineers after the war documented the enormous scope of American radar superiority across every dimension of naval warfare. Captain Minoru Yokoi, who served as technical intelligence officer for the combined fleet, spent months examining captured American radar equipment while attempting to understand how Japanese industry had fallen so far behind American electronic development. His classified report, declassified in 1975, provided the most comprehensive Japanese assessment of the technological gap that had determined Pacific War outcomes. American Radar Systems Incorporated, manufacturing precision and electronic sophistication that exceeded our theoretical understanding of achievable technology. Yokoi wrote in his final assessment, "The vacuum tubes alone used in their detection equipment required metallurgical processes we could not duplicate despite possessing complete technical documentation. Their production methods achieved quality control standards that ensured over 95% of completed systems functioned perfectly under combat conditions, while our limited radar production suffered failure rates exceeding 40%, even during peacetime testing. The strategic implications of American radar dominance had become apparent to Japanese military leadership by mid-1943, yet Japan's industrial limitations prevented development of effective countermeasures or comparable systems. The resources required for radar production exceeded Japan's available capacity in vacuum tubes, precision manufacturing, and electrical components, even when military needs received absolute priority. More critically, the skilled technicians necessary for radar maintenance and operation required training programs Japan could not support, given manpower constraints and educational limitations. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's final assessment of American capabilities, written just weeks before his death in April 1943, accurately predicted the technological revolution that would determine Pacific War outcomes. The Americans possess industrial capacity and technical innovation that exceeds our ability to counter through traditional military methods. Yamamoto wrote in his classified correspondence with naval headquarters, "Their radar capabilities represent advances that fundamentally alter naval warfare beyond our comprehension or ability to match with existing resources." The human cost of Japanese technological inferiority was documented through casualty statistics that revealed the devastating effectiveness of American radar-directed operations. During night surface engagements from 1943 through 1945, Japanese naval forces suffered losses exceeding 80%, while inflicting casualties on American forces of less than 15%. The kill ratios achieved through radar superiority exceeded anything previously recorded in naval warfare history, demonstrating technological advantages that rendered conventional tactical concepts obsolete. Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe, who survived multiple engagements against radar-equipped American destroyers while commanding the submarine I-168, provided detailed testimony about the psychological transformation Japanese naval personnel experienced when confronted with American electronic supremacy. Our crews entered combat with supreme confidence in training and equipment that had dominated Pacific operations during early war periods, Tanabe recalled during post-war interviews. By 1944, this confidence had been replaced by fatalistic acceptance that we faced enemies possessing capabilities we could never match or effectively counter. The industrial mobilization that supported American radar operations demonstrated manufacturing achievements that exceeded the productive capacity of most industrial nations. The Western Electric Company alone produced radar equipment worth over $3.7 billion during the war years, requiring precision manufacturing techniques and quality control procedures that Japanese industry could not duplicate despite access to captured American equipment and complete technical documentation. The educational programs that created skilled American radar operators represented systematic training, efforts that exceeded Japanese naval education in scope and effectiveness. The Naval Electronics Training Schools graduated over 47,000 radar technicians during the war years, each completing comprehensive courses in electromagnetic theory, equipment maintenance, and tactical applications that exceeded the technical knowledge of most Japanese naval officers. These specialists maintained American radar systems with reliability rates that surpassed mechanical equipment while developing tactical innovations that enhanced system performance beyond manufacturer specifications. The Battle of Leyte Gulf represented the culmination of American radar superiority in major fleet operations, demonstrating technological dominance that rendered Japanese numerical advantages meaningless against electronically coordinated American forces. Admiral Takeo Kurita's Center Force, the most powerful Japanese surface fleet assembled since Midway, found itself tactically outmaneuvered by American commanders who possessed complete electronic intelligence about Japanese movements while denying similar information to their opponents. The engagement off Samar on October 25, 1944, provided the final demonstration of how radar had revolutionized naval warfare beyond recognition from pre-war concepts. Admiral Clifton Sprague's escort carrier task unit, vastly outgunned by Kurita's battleships and cruisers, achieved tactical success through radar-directed operations that allowed perfect coordination of defensive measures while maintaining continuous awareness of Japanese movements and intentions. Captain Ernest Evans, commanding USS Johnston during the Samar engagement, used radar intelligence to position his destroyer for torpedo attacks against Japanese heavy cruisers from ranges where visual detection was impossible. His successful attack on the cruiser Kumano was achieved through radar-directed approach and fire control that allowed precise weapon deployment despite smoke and weather conditions that reduced visibility to less than 1,000 yards. Japanese gunners attempting to engage Johnston were reduced to firing at muzzle flashes while American radar operators maintained continuous tracking of target positions. The destroyer escort USS Samuel B. Roberts achieved similar success against the battleship Chikuma using radar-directed gunfire that struck the much larger vessel repeatedly. Despite the enormous disparity in firepower, Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland positioned his small vessel using radar intelligence about enemy formation movements, then engaged with main battery fire directed by Mark 8 T8 radar that provided accuracy equal to daylight gunnery despite visibility conditions that made visual target identification impossible. The strategic consequences of American radar supremacy extended beyond immediate tactical advantages to encompass fundamental changes in naval warfare doctrine for all future conflicts. The technological revolution that radar represented established electronic warfare as the primary determinant of naval superiority, rendering traditional advantages in ship design, crew training, and tactical excellence secondary to possession of superior detection and coordination systems. The lessons learned during Pacific operations influenced naval development for decades following World War II, establishing principles that remain fundamental to modern naval operations. The side possessing superior electronic capabilities would achieve decisive advantages in detection, coordination, and tactical execution that human skill and courage could not overcome through conventional methods. A principle demonstrated repeatedly during every major engagement between American and Japanese forces from 1943 through 1945. Admiral Nimitz's final assessment of Pacific War outcomes, delivered during post-war briefings to naval leadership, identified radar as the decisive factor that had enabled American victory despite initial disadvantages in geographic position, combat experience, and tactical doctrine. Our radar capabilities provided technological advantages that overcame enemy superiority in traditional naval warfare elements, Nimitz concluded. Electronic supremacy proved more decisive than superior ships, better trained crews, or tactical innovation in determining engagement outcomes throughout the Pacific theater.